All right, DeNita. Well, first, I'm jealous of your name. I always wanted a cool name where the uppercase and lowercase change, but my parents gave me boring Nick. You have a fun name, so that's point one. Point two.
The only other DeNitas I've ever met don't have the fancy extra capital in the middle, so cool. Definitely unique.
It's like a celebrity.
That's right.
The second, and I like to start this off, called the 5-minute segment, is your backdrop, because I think it frames where the conversation is going to go. So as silly as this question is, how did you accidentally fall into franchising?
So I actually was very intentional when I was leaving my corporate job and going into business for myself. It was my second time owning a business. And so I was intentional that I wanted the support of a franchise the second time around. So my journey into franchising started as a franchisee, and I had a successful franchise business for about 10 years. As I was considering my exit strategy in the business ownership, an opportunity came up to join the leadership team of that brand's franchisor. And so that's how I've moved to the other side of the equation.
What was that brand?
They've rebranded in the last couple of years. So originally when I was a part of it, it was College Nannies and Sitters. And today it's known as Jovi Childcare. So they're a provider of premium in-home childcare services.
I love it. So, and I'm sure this has tremendous value to what you do in your leadership role, and even what you did in the leadership role then, to be able to say, I walked the day in the life of a franchisee. If you go back to that moment and think about even making the decision the second time into business, you're going to buy a franchise. What was that like? What do you wish you knew then that you know now?
You know, I mean, it was so important to me thinking about business ownership the second time that I wasn't going to have to vet every technology platform. I wasn't going to have to either create or pay somebody to create every marketing asset, and that somebody would knew how to do what I didn't know how to do, right? They could tell me how to do the next thing. I think what I wished that I had known at that time, was that it sometimes takes a little longer than you expect, but to don't give up. So, and I didn't give up, right? I owned the business for 10 years. And then there comes a tipping point when the business goes from, I think we can do this, into we're flying, we're running, right? We're just really hitting it. And that's at different points for different types of businesses. It's at different points, sometimes even different markets within the same business, but that it's always there. That tipping point is there.
You started your own business the first go around?
I did.
Yeah. I mean, like, and I'm going to frame this. I think about me starting my business. For the first 3 years, I said the most that I'm going to pull out of the business is a salary of $42,000. And the whole mindset was any additional capital is going to go into reserve, because I figured I need 3 years to build up a reserve. And so if I think about the profitability of the business, like, thankfully we were profitable from day one, and the pennies started turning into dollars, which turned into a significant reserve, so that when I had staff, which we started hiring about 6 months in, I wasn't fearful of whether I could pay their salaries.
Right.
With a franchise, it's interesting. And part of it, I think, is the industry, and part of it is the lack of education. In franchising, we throw these big fancy numbers out there through item 19 and say, look at how much you can make. And so some brands go very high with these numbers. And so you think about, and I'm curious, you're bootstrapping on business one, but you think about the process of starting a business. It takes time and energy, blood, sweat, and tears. And we learn how to battle through the brick walls of business so that we can battle through and go through. It's almost like, because of the lack of education of what franchising is, because of the expectations based on the numbers, some franchisees go into business saying, I'm just going to make magic money on day one. And what you just said is, give it time. But if we said that in a sales process to a franchisee, it's going to take time. They're like, well, my break even is taking too long, even though everybody else can be full of shit. But the point is, like, that's a complex thing. And I'm curious from your viewpoint, bootstrapping a business to franchising to having exhaustive conversations over your career on. It does take time, but once you break through, you can change the wealth projection for your family. How do some of those statements connect with you?
It's so funny that you say that, because this is some of the conversations we've been having internally, both with people considering our brand as well as franchisees that are coming in, that have made the decision to join, but they're getting started. And it's the understanding that, yes, you're buying a franchise, which comes with all of these things. It comes with a brand that's already built out. It comes with an ops manual. It comes with a group of peers. It comes with support from the franchisor, but it's still starting a business from the ground up, right? And you still are a business owner who has to make decisions in your own day-to-day running of the business that can positively or negatively impact your business, right? And so what I find sometimes is that franchisees have this incorrect vision that buying a franchise guarantees them success, and it guarantees them success quickly, even though that's not the message that they get in the discovery process. It's certainly not the message they get if they do validation and they talk to existing franchisees who will tell them how long the grind is. They'll tell them that, right? But they come in with this, oh, I'm going to hit the AUV that's shown in the item 19 at the end of year 1. I haven't seen that happen yet. I mean, maybe it's possible, but I sure haven't seen it happen.
Personal question: when you started your first business, how much cash did you have to start it?
So I had about 6 months of operating capital ready to go, right? Knowing that, and I was taking out a minimal salary. But I had to hire staff in my prior business from the start. It wasn't something I could do as a solopreneur. So I had to have enough money to get through there for about 6 months.
The reason I ask it, I mean, I had a little bit less than $10,000 in the bank account when I started ours. Now I could go into the complexities of other things that I did to get it there, but I think about you taking minimal, me taking minimal. It's almost like in franchising, because you have to have some capital. Like you can't just say I have zero. And frankly, me with 10 grand, I would have been disqualified from
right. Yeah, we wouldn't have taken you, Nick. We would have said, nope, don't need it.
Now, if I show you my portfolio now, I could qualify for many franchise brands. But it's almost like the grit and hustle element, and that's part of the discovery, like, because that's currency. Like, how do you find someone that can say, yes, I see the vision. I want to get to what item 19 says. I'm going to put the hustle, the grit in here. I'm not going to take money out of here so I can build up a stockpile and I can scale the business. It's almost like we're looking for someone that doesn't have the money. They're the mindset that they don't have any money, but we need someone who has the money. And then we're going to put them in here. And how do we align those expectations? It's such a complex thing. And again, like if I really break it down for the industry, it's a lack of education of what franchising is,
right,
which causes some of this turbulence in the process of making a decision to buy a franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that, our franchise development team and even our onboarding team deal with every single day, right? It's just that, like, that little piece that's missing of, yes, you've got the keys to the kingdom, but you still have to run the gauntlet for the keys to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And your insight as a franchisee, and I would imagine whether they listen to you or not, if you're talking peer-to-peer franchisee and say, look, I've been there. I grew a business for 10 years successfully in franchising. I exited. I became an executive leader. Listen to what I'm saying. At least there's a credibility that's associated with you. Right.
And I do have that conversation with a lot, people that are considering the brand. I have that conversation with people who are in the brand and feel like they're stuck, right? And they feel like it's not doing what they want it to do. And I can sometimes give them a little tough love in a way that's different than their business coach or other members of the leadership team, because I've been there. My business wasn't where I wanted it to be at the end of year 2. I had to make decisions and take actions that led to a different outcome.
And what you just said, my, me, and I. And I think that's where when franchisees pass the blame on to the franchisor, it's almost like an escape of their own reality. But when you say my, me, and I, and you look in the mirror and say, whatever happens next, tomorrow or happened yesterday, I'm in charge of that. Like, that's the breakthrough moment that I think franchisees have to get through in order to find success.
Agreed. Absolutely. At the end of the day, they're still the owner of the business. We can provide them with best practices. We can provide them with peers to talk to. We can provide them with a roadmap to follow, but I can't make them do any of those things unless it's in their franchise agreement, right? I can't make them follow our suggestions in so many different ways, operationally, marketing. And so at the end of the day, it's their responsibility. They've got to hire the right people. They've got to make the right decisions on their pricing. They have to make the right decisions on their marketing efforts. They have to make the right decisions on how they treat their customers. I can't be in their business doing those things for them.
All right, we've established who you are as a person, which I think is important. Let's move into the brand. I say this fake cocktail hour. You're at a cocktail hour and someone says, "What's Pet Wants?" How do you answer that?
I answer that with, we are a pet health and wellness brand focused on helping pet owners have their dogs and cats live longer, healthier lives.
Do you find, is there a consistency of someone that comes to the table? Let's say and I'm going to play through fake ones. I always wanted to own a doggy daycare, but I looked at the operational side and it doesn't align with my expectations. So therefore I go down the funnel. Or is it as extreme as I looked at tax preparation and I looked at similar investments and I land on Pet Wants? How are the candidates finding you?
So most of them would be in that first bucket that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. What we have found is that there's only one unifying characteristic amongst our franchisees, and it is that they have a passion for pet health and wellness. They come from every imaginable professional background. What we find is that we've talked to, especially in the last couple of years, we've had a lot of potential investors look at our brand and they can see the huge growth in the pet space, and they can see our initial investment to AUV ratio and its tops in the industry. And this is great. And they get all the way down to the end. And because they don't love dogs and cats, they see that there will be a barrier between them and their customer base. And that if they don't love dogs and cats, they don't necessarily know how to hire somebody that could be the face of the business that loves dogs and cats. And so in the end, they typically will pull back and say, you know what, if I'm going to be an investor, I can be an investor over here in something that passion isn't a required ingredient.
It's almost like a secret governor that you have in your business. Because
it is.
Like if you think about, I don't know, power washing, it's not like people are like, boy, I've always dreamt of owning a power washing business. And I love it. I mean, it is cool to watch something get clean afterwards, but it's a different thing here. The governor at that finish line is like, do you love animals? And if the answer is then the odds of you having that grit and hustle deteriorate.
It is. And it's interesting. We had a owner in my former brand that had sold his business there, and he was looking for his next opportunity. And because he and I had such a great relationship and he was excited to see where I had gone, he contacted me and he said, hey, I'd like to check out your brand. So I connected him with our franchise development team. And a couple of weeks in, he called me and he said, listen, he said, I think you have a great brand. He said, but I really don't like dogs. And so I don't think I can be successful in this. He said, I can't imagine being at an event or in my retail store and having somebody's dog come up to me and me being afraid of it. He said, I don't think that would be good for business. And I said, you're right. That's a great decision. And so I've watched him go into another business where he is passionate about what he does. And So yeah, it's that built-in piece of that's got to be the secret sauce.
All right, on call 2 here on out with the candidate, you got to make them do their dog voice, because if they can't make the octave go high, then there's no way.
I love it. I love it. My dog's right behind me taking a nap, so I can speak for her anytime we need to.
I love it. All right, let's kick into the investment. Tricky question, but cost to get in, how much I can make. How do you answer that question when a candidate asks?
So I answer the question with the fact that our initial investment range is between 137 and 219. That the biggest reason for that seemingly large gap is differences in real estate costs in super hot markets. Tough sometimes to get landlords to kick in tenant improvement dollars or rent abatement. In other markets, there's a lot more commercial real estate available. And so we can typically get a franchisee into their small footprint space at a lower level. In terms of how much you can make, our AUV in our item 19 is 561,000. Our upper quartile AUV is 1.1 million. So our upper quartile performers obviously are really getting it done. They're getting it done in the small footprint space that we recommend by going about it in the same way that our ops manual and our corporate team tells them to do it. I think for me, again, I mentioned this a little earlier, I think our biggest differentiator when somebody's thinking about how much do I need to spend to get in and how much can I make is the ratio between those two numbers. So if you take our top end at 219 and our AUV at 561, that's a ratio of 2.6. So our AUV is 2.6 times the initial investment. You look at any other pet retail brand, there are some that are below a 1, and the closest one to us is a 2.0. So when I compare how much do I have to spend to get started with how much can my revenue be, we're head and shoulders above anybody else in the space.
Comment and a question. Comment is, I mean, it makes sense. Like if you say, do you want your pet to live a healthier, longer life? The answer is absolutely. This is a part of our family. Just like we want our children to live the same way. The way that the food that we put into them and the exercise and health and wellness that we give to them is so important. You flash backwards, call it 15 years, there's pet wellness doesn't really exist.
Exactly.
So now we're talking about the longevity of something that is important to us. So I would imagine we're going to see the average lifeline of an animal increase based on the way that we're creating solutions here. The variance between a low performer and a high performer, does it come down to the grit and hustle? Like when you're looking at them in the mirror, is it very clear to you that says they're following the system, they're listening to the advice, and they're running the way that they need to run? Is it that simple, or is it other variables?
Vast majority, it really comes down to, have they embraced the model and all of it, right? Have they opened their retail store in a reasonable time frame after launch, but did they embrace phase 1 of our launch where they're in an event-based mobile delivery model where they're generating revenue, generating customers, making community connections? If they skip that part, their retail launch doesn't go as well, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to embrace phase 1 and start generating that revenue up front. Then when you move into your retail store, you can't abandon phase 1 because that's still a continuing part of your ongoing success. You have to still be in the community. You have to invite the community into your store. And so I can look at our monthly reports and look at revenue, and I can pick out those that are growing, have embraced the full component of our business. Those that are flat, those that are not growing very well, I can say they either didn't embrace phase 1 and the real launch of the business, or they got into their retail store and they stopped going out in the community.
All right, let's close with the vision. I mean, now you're in charge. You go from franchisee listening to franchisor to the big boss. What's your vision for the business?
I think our vision is that obviously we want to continue to expand our footprint. We have very few markets in the US that are sold out or close to sold out. We have a lot of real estate left. But I think equally alongside that, it is to continue to generate profitability opportunities for our existing franchisees. So whether that comes from improvements in efficiency, whether that comes from new revenue channels, whether that comes from better support from our team, which we continue to try to add resources and opportunities to support them in their growth. It's growing those two trajectories side by side in helping the existing franchisees become more profitable, reach more pet owners while we add new ones.
Been doing this a long time. Next year, 2025 is my 20th year in franchising, and there's a consistency on what I see in successful businesses, and it's the leader mentality. It starts there, and then obviously the product has to resonate with the consumer. But I'm going to say this. I'm going to give you your headline because I see it. I think you having a franchisee mindset with a franchisor vision is what is making this business special. And if I'm a buyer and I'm looking for the intangible, you can look across, you could find a million different pet franchises, but you have to look at the intangibles of who's going to lead me and what is their mindset. And because you have a franchisee mindset, that means the expectations of a franchisee is high, and that should relate back to the performance of the business. And just in closing, I'm grateful that we had this conversation.
Absolutely. I am too, Nick.
You're doing awesome stuff, and I look forward to seeing where the story goes.
Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Of course, for DeNita, I'm Nick. This is the Franchisor Hot Seat. Take care.